guys, this is Justin. Hello and welcome to another video. So over here on the Eckhart's Ladder channel, we are winding down our coverage of Ahsoka, and I thought an interesting capstone could be a topic that's been requested a few times, and that is a look at the specific ships within Thrawn's forces, both in the past, in Legends and canon, and what we might expect to see in future series. Now, obviously, if there's an Ahsoka Season 2 or a Thrawn movie, I doubt they'll have, a dozen different ship types, just for, financial and audience familiarity reasons, but we can still talk about ships that we'd expect him to use. And of course, I will start things off simply with the Imperial Star Destroyer. Thrawn's flagship in Star Wars canon and Legends is the Chimera. Now, there is actually a difference in Star Wars Legends. The Chimera was an Imperial 2 class Star Destroyer, but in canon, given that he's whisked away to another galaxy before the Imperial 2 fully entered service, he's got an ISD-1. A lot of people were confused, including myself, in the scene where it first appears, but that actually is an ISD-1 style communications tower. It's just all busted up. The Imperial 1 Star Destroyer is one of the most powerful ships in the galaxy, certainly one of the most powerful ships regularly seen. Thrawn's is, of course, beat up, but I would expect that he will have many more fighting by his side before the campaign ends. Both Imperial Star Destroyer variants focus heavily on anti-capital ship firepower. They lack in point defense systems, but usually try to make up for that with both escort ships and a variety of carried fighter craft. Another ship I think likely to make its way into Thrawn's fleet, based not only on the past portrayals of the character, but just logic, is the Interdictor class cruiser. Interdiction is basically the ability to stop ships from jumping to hyperspace, and this is something Thrawn has used throughout canon and Legends. It's arguably one of the main ways that we see his incredible tactical mind manifested. In Legends, he used interdiction fields to facilitate ultra-precise hyperspace jumps, to nearly capture Luke Skywalker, and we've seen him do the same in Star Wars canon. There are various different ships with interdiction capabilities, some as large as a Star Destroyer. It's my guess we'd probably see the smaller Interdictor cruiser. It's also known as the Immobilizer 418. It's about 1/3 the length of an Imperial Star Destroyer. Itself doesn't really have much in terms of offensive capabilities, and obviously because of its extreme value, needs to be protected at all times. For the Rebels, destroying an Interdictor cruiser will often be the difference between survival and death. Another ship intrinsically tied even more so to Thrawn's campaign in Star Wars Legends was the Dreadnought class heavy cruiser. I'm actually a little less confident that this one shows up in Star Wars canon. In short, the Dreadnought class heavy cruiser was a 600-meter long capital ship, first created during the Republic era. In Legends, Thrawn discovers the Katana fleet, which basically serves as the backbone of his campaign against the New Republic. The Katana fleet was a large Republic-era fleet, which was lost due to what was known as a hive virus. A portion of the fleet, the vast majority, was collected by Thrawn, while the New Republic got other bits of it. Dreadnoughts in general, especially of that vintage, were generally very crew-intensive. They were slow, but they had decent armor and weaponry. Katana Dreadnoughts were actually modified as to need fewer crew, but were still antiquated vessels. So the reason why I don't think these will appear in Star Wars canon, or the Dreadnought itself already has, but I don't think it'll be one of Thrawn's ships, is I think adding a Katana fleet storyline will probably be a little bit too busy for a television show. It makes sense when you've got a lot of space to fill in books, but I don't know. Thrawn will probably need to get new ships somehow. Book 1 of the Thrawn trilogy culminates in him attempting to steal ships from the New Republic shipyards at Sluis Vaughn. I wonder whether we may see him try to make off with some of those New Republic cruisers that they've been focusing so heavily on. I do think we will see Thrawn use a smaller variant of capital ship, and that's honestly just to tie in with his roots from Star Wars Legends, and in that respect, I think there are several obvious options, one being, of course, the Imperial light cruiser, the Architens. The Architens has been a mainstay of Imperial fleets in Star Wars canon. It seems like they all have Quasar-class heavy cruisers, Architens, Imperial Star Destroyers, and smaller ships like Gazantis carrying TIE fighters. Thrawn has been burned by the Architens before, especially when it comes to facing off against Hera Syndulla and the Rebels, but that's precisely the reason why it's likely to see another appearance. Plus, just practically, we know they have an Imperial light cruiser model from The Mandalorian, although also Gideon's cruisers of a slightly different vintage. And of course, you can also say the same of the Gazanti. Gideon's cruiser subtype was called a 546 cruiser. It was about 1.5 times the size of an ordinary Architens, a ship which itself was a nice combination of turbo laser batteries, quad laser cannons, and flexibility. And it makes sense why Thrawn would like a ship like that. Not the most sturdy of vessels, however, as we saw throughout Star Wars Rebels, including in one case where it got absolutely murked by that special beam cannon B-Wing. Imperial Star Destroyers, Architens, Gazantis, and even Dreadnought class heavy cruisers were all parts of Thrawn's fleet, the 7th Fleet, pretty much the last time we saw it in Rebels, so it would make sense that when he reunites with them, that some of those ships could still be present. Star Wars Legends had Thrawn use several other ships directly during his campaign. Notably, there was the Victory class Star Destroyer. I'm going to be pretty short on this one as I've covered the Victory multiple times on the channel. The VSD was a slower, smaller, sort of in-between ship. Not quite an Imperial Star Destroyer, actually about half the size of one, but more powerful than most small ships within the Imperial Navy. Like the Imperial Star Destroyer, they brought a ton of firepower to bear. The Victory 1 Star Destroyer, there were 2 variants, notably relied heavily on concussion missile launchers, whereas the second was more traditional in design. In his campaign, Thrawn used these extremely effectively for hit-and-run attacks. They worked especially well with precise hyperspace jumps, facilitated by interdictor cruisers, and one of their main features in Legends was the idea that a Victory Star Destroyer was actually small enough that it could enter atmosphere, whereas an Imperial Star Destroyer could not. Obviously, given what we've seen in Andor, Rogue One, that's no longer an important distinction. That being said, the Victory class is canon, although it's not made any real significant appearances. In Legends, Thrawn also used a couple darling ships of this channel, including the Lancer class frigate, which was a dedicated anti-starfighter frigate, which was, although fairly slow, incredibly effective at screening against enemy starfighters, as well as a Carrack class cruiser. Just imagine that as basically a smaller Dreadnought, and a Strike class cruiser, which I've also covered in a dedicated video. Aside from that, Thrawn will be relying on the underworld. He'll probably reach out to criminal gangs across the galaxy. That was a big aspect of his Legends campaign, and in canon, we may also see Thrawn call out and use ships of the Chiss Ascendancy. Unfortunately, we don't really know much about Chiss ships, except for the fact that they're quite small, and at least at the time of Thrawn's trilogy, his Ascendancy trilogy, significantly underpowered in terms of technology compared to ships of the greater galaxy. But there's been so much time since Thrawn's left, and presumably he's feeding technology back to the Chiss, so if he does seek out their help, it's really hard to say what they could be offering. He could also be getting strange technology from his other sources, including the Proto-First Order types as led by Hux. But that's just a look at some of the ships we could see Thrawn wield, alongside, of course, the regular shuttles and starfighters and whatever else. But I also hope we get a few new Imperial designs, and maybe we see the Raider class Corvette. I didn't mention that, but they've been everywhere as well. Anyway, until next time, be safe, have a good one. I'll see you soon.